This is the third day of this August, September 1982 7-day Sesshin. And today we will work on koan number 5 from the Mumon Kan, called Kyogen's Man Up a Tree. The book that we're taking this koan from is Zen Comments on the Mumon Kan by Zenkai Shibayama, and we may at times read sections from this book. It will be mentioned at the time. This is the case of the koan. Master Kyogen said, "It is like a man up a tree who hangs from a branch by his mouth. His hands cannot grasp a bough. His feet cannot touch the tree. Another man comes under the tree and asks him the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the west. If he does not answer, he does not meet the questioner's need. If he answers, he will lose his life. At such a time, how should he answer? Here's Mumon's commentary. Even though your eloquence flows like a river, it is all to no avail. Even if you can expound the great Tripitaka, which is the totality of the Buddhist canon, scriptures, etc., dialogues, everything recorded, what the Buddha's sayings and doings. Even if you can expound the great Tripitaka, it is also of no use. If you can really answer it, you will revive the dead and kill the living. If, however, you are unable to answer, wait for Maitreya to come and ask him. Maitreya being in Buddhism the future Buddha, the next Buddha, who may come, who knows when. And the verse, the poem, by Mumon, who is the compiler of this collection. Kyogen is just gibbering. How vicious his poison is. Stopping up the monks' mouths, he makes their devil's eyes glare. Like a man up a tree, or let's say like a person up a tree. Because it's you, whether you're a man or a woman. Hanging from a branch by one's mouth. Just enter into this scene. Don't be too reasonable or rational about it, because you may say, well, if I can reach it with my mouth, I can also reach it with my hands. No, he says you can't, so go along with that. Hanging from your teeth. That's dramatic enough, isn't it? High tree. In another version it says the branch from which he hangs is right over a deep abyss, a bottomless one. Precipice. Even more dramatic. Because in the other case, maybe he'll just break a leg or something. His hands cannot grasp a thing. Feet cannot touch any ground. Nothing. And there comes a man and asks a very vital question. And it's a serious man or person. person who has devoted his or her life to finding out the answer to this question. The question here is, and we will talk about it, the meaning of it, is what's the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? Which means, what's the meaning of life? Or life and death? What is truth? What is reality? Or one mind beyond all dualism, beyond all opposition, conflict, contradiction. I need to know. Because I cannot live any longer the way I do, in conflict and misery and contradiction and opposition and insurmountable problems left and right, behind me and in front of me. Kyogen says if he does not answer that person hanging there, and in the usual versions it says it's a monk, and the monk has given a vow to help all sentient beings. And one needn't have taken that vow to feel that responsibility thoroughly. So Kyogen says, he doesn't answer, he does not meet the questioner's need. Another version says he does not fulfill his vows. This is all right. He doesn't fulfill this questioner's need. If he answers, he will lose his life. Obviously, drop from the tree, down into the precipice. At such a time, how should he answer? The most vivid scene created here by Kyogen to depict total dilemma, total crisis. Which each one of us faces if we're thoroughly aware every instant. In this case, let's, for this particular case, read briefly what Shibayama says about Kyogen's life. Kyogen, the creator of this koan. It says Kyogen was a man of erudition and strong memory. Supposed to have been a scholar. You read another biography, great scholar in Buddhism. He was unusually bright and talented. From his childhood, he was fond of learning. He first studied under Master Hyakujo, but as the latter died soon after he started, he continued his Zen training under Isan. The Japanese names here, translations of Chinese names. Isan recognized unusual genius in him and wished somehow to open his spiritual eye. Opening spiritual eye meaning an opening beyond all dualism, beyond all opposition of me and you, us and them. Know me and know you. Which does not mean the disappearance of this body and that body. would be mysticism or something, I don't know what.
It would be mysticism
Magic.
or something, I don't know what. Magic.
One day he called Kyogen,
One day
teacher
he
Isan.
called Kyogen, this
called
teacher
Kyogen
Isan,
and said, I do not want to hear from you what
called
you've
Kyogen
learned
and
from
said, I
Scripture,
do not want to hear from you what you've learned from
nor the
Scriptures,
result of your accumulated studies and
nor the result
speculations.
of your accumulated studies and speculations.
Just give me the essential word about yourself
Just
before
give
you
me the
were born,
essential word about yourself before you were born,
before you knew either east or west.
before you knew either east or west,
Saying, give me a word that does not
Saying,
come out of knowledge.
give me a word that does not
Or
come
memory.
out of knowledge or memory.
At this unexpected question,
At this
we're continuing
unexpected
with
question, we're
Kyogen was
continuing
quite
with
at a loss
Shibayama.
and could not utter
Kyogen was
a word.
quite at a loss and could not utter a word.
That's significant.
That's significant.
We were talking about yesterday how quickly we just shoot
We were
forth
talking about
words
yesterday
and
how quickly we just
explanations.
shoot forth words and explanations, and
He couldn't, because he understood
couldn't.
the demand.
because he understood the demand,
And he understood that anything he would say would
and
come
he
out of
understood
memory,
that anything he would say would come out of memory,
would not
and
come from this
knowledge.
self
would not come
that
from the
knows
south,
neither east nor west,
that knows neither east
and
nor
was there
west,
before he was born,
and was there before he was born,
born into knowledge.
born into knowledge.
He searched diligently, but
He
each time he
searched
presented an
diligently,
answer to Isan, he found
But
the
each
master
time he
flatly
presented an
rejected
answer
it.
to Isan, he found the master
Finally,
flatly
with his energy
rejected it.
all exhausted,
Finally, with his
Kyogen
energy all
came to Isan and
exhausted,
implored him,
Kyogen
please teach it
came to
me.
Isan and implored him,
It,
please
in
teach
quotation
it
marks,
to me.
Please teach it to me.
It, in quotation marks, please teach it to me.
Even though I may show it to you,
Even
said
though I
Isan,
may show it to you, said
it is
Isan,
my word and has nothing to do with your answer.
it is my word and has nothing to do with your answer.
And he paid no attention to Kyogen's plea.
And he paid no attention to Kyogen's plea.
In disappointment, Kyogen took out his books and the
In
notes from his
disappointment,
years of
Kyogen
study and
took out
burned
his
them
books
all,
and the notes from
saying,
his years of study and burned
"Pictures
them
of
all,
cake do
saying,
not satisfy one's hunger."
pictures of cake do not satisfy one's hunger.
Someone else said you can't eat the menu.
Someone else said you can't eat the menu.
All the menu does is create pictures, doesn't it?
All the menu does is create pictures, doesn't it?
Driven to despair by his inability to break through
Driven
the
to
barrier,
despair by his inability
he
to
gave
break
up his
through the
training
barrier,
and left Isan's
he
monastery
gave up his
in
training
tears.
and left Isan's
He
monastery
visited the
in
grave
tears.
of the national teacher Etsu and
He
decided
visited
to
the
lead
grave
his
of the
life as a
national teacher
nameless
Etchu and
gravekeeper
decided to
there.
lead his life as a nameless gravekeeper there. Nameless.
Someone came into Doksan yesterday, I believe it
Someone came into Doksan yesterday, I believe
and
it was,
reported of an intense fear,
and
sensed at
reported
the
of
idea
an
of
intense
being
fear,
nobody.
sensed at the idea of being nobody.
Which means there may have been a touch,
Which means there may have been a
of
touch,
being
a
nobody.
contact
No
with that
images
state
of
of
oneself.
being nobody. No
How does one
images
respond
of
in a case
oneself.
like this?
How does one respond in a case like
Fear
this?
means, I don't want that. I must be
Fear
somebody.
means, I don't want that. I must be somebody.
It's not a calculated decision, it's how we've been conditioned.
It's not a
To be
calculated decision, it's
somebody.
how we've been conditioned. To be somebody.
In our earliest years, at least a good girl.
In our earliest years, at least a good girl,
It has a profound influence on our later life.
which has a
This
profound
needing to be
influence
a
on our
good
later
boy
life.
and girl.
This needing to be a good boy and girl.
As one other person pointed out,
As one other
described it,
person
always looking into the
pointed
eyes
out,
of others.
described it,
For how
always
they-
looking into the eyes of others,
What they're going
For
to
how
do
they-
to me, or how they're going to
what they're going
evaluate
to
me.
do to me, or how they're going to evaluate me.
So Kyogen, leading this life
So
of a
Kyogen,
nameless gravekeeper.
leading this life of a nameless gravekeeper.
Don't know why he chose this particular
Don't know why he chose this particular thing.
thing. In Rochester, the new place where renting is near
In Rochester,
Mount Hope
the new
Cemetery.
place where renting is near Mount Hope
One
Cemetery.
person said it's the most alive place in Rochester.
One person said it's the most
Beautiful,
alive place in
yeah.
Rochester.
It's so hard to
beautiful
imagine to be
cemetery.
a gravekeeper there.
It'd be so hard to imagine to be a gravekeeper there.
Although maybe the beauty there is that there doesn't seem to be any gravekeeper.
Well, maybe the beauty there is that there doesn't seem to be any gravekeeper. It's quite wild.
There are people working around there.
But there are people working around there.
Although his biography does not give us any details,
Although his biography
inner
does not
struggle
give us
and
any
searching must have
details,
continued and
his inner
increased
struggle
day
and
and
searching
night.
must have continued and increased
Important
day and
statement.
night.
Leaving Isan didn't mean
It's an important
to throw in a
statement.
sponge.
Leaving Isan didn't mean to throw in a sponge.
He had to get away from
Just, he had to get
everyone.
away from everyone.
from this teacher who, as far as he was
Particularly from this
concerned,
teacher who,
couldn't tell
as
him
far
a
as
thing.
he was concerned,
Couldn't show him a thing.
couldn't tell him a thing. Couldn't show him a thing.
Rather threw the
Rather threw the
ball back into his court.
rather threw the ball back into his
You have to
court.
do this yourself.
Tell him you have to do this yourself.
Find out for yourself
Find out for yourself
what it is.
what it is.
His searching must have continued and increased day and night.
His
even
searching
after he
must have
despaired of
continued
his
and
ability
increased day and
decided to
night
live
even
as a
after he
gravekeeper.
despaired of his ability and decided to live as a
Leaving out
gravekeeper.
few sentences here and there.
Leaving
One
out a
day
few
while
sentences
cleaning
here and
the
there.
yard, Kyogen
One
threw
day
the
while
rubbish
cleaning
into
the yard,
a
Kyogen
stone
threw
hit
the
a
rubbish
bamboo.
into the
He heard
bushes.
the crash in it at that
A stone
moment.
hit a
All
bamboo.
of
He
a
heard the
sudden,
crash in it at that moment.
all his doubts
All of a
vanished.
sudden, all his doubts vanished.
He burst into laughter.
He burst into laughter in spite of himself.
The man, the person hanging in the tree, as one
The man, the person hanging in the tree, as one
described it
person
very aptly as the
described
tree of
that
knowledge.
tree very aptly as the tree of knowledge.
And please do not misinterpret me as
And please do not misinterpret me as
all knowledge.
deprecating all knowledge.
As a place for knowledge.
As a place for knowledge.
Surely a
Yes.
place for proper, clear,
Surely a place for proper, clear, healthy thinking.
the dilemma here is, that is described here is
The dilemma here that is described here is
the total lack of freedom, of acting
the total lack of freedom,
freely, not
of
from any
acting
idea,
freely, not
From
from
any
any ideas, from any inculcation,
conditioning, programming.
conditioning,
You say,
programming.
well, that's a lot of
You may say,
nonsense.
well,
there is such a thing as free choice.
That's a lot of nonsense. There is such a thing as free
How do you
choice.
choose?
But think it through.
Choose
How do you
according
choose? Don't you
to
choose
likes and
according
dislikes which have been conditioned in one way
to your
or
likes and dislikes, which have been
another,
conditioned in one way or another?
to the civilization,
By the family you grew up in, the culture, the civilization, oh, so many things.
we are bound by our memory. Everything
We're
new
bound by our memory. Everything new we approach,
of memory, of what
we
already
see
know.
through the tinted glasses of memory, of what we already know.
And this whole
And this is this whole immense problem in relationship, not being able to meet each other freshly and clearly and newly every time, rather than seeing each other through all that we've chalked up about each other that happened in the past. You did that, and I cannot forget that. I hold an old grudge against you. I cannot meet you. Totally unpreoccupied. Free, spontaneous. We do talk a lot about spontaneity, but what is it really? Where does it come from? Where does our wit come from?
All we do, always say and think.
All we do, always say and think is somehow or other tied up with this notion of me, which is knowledge, idea, memory, image, and you, which is the same thing. And in that we're caught. It's a straitjacket. It's a man, a person, a woman up a tree, not being able to reach. Or maybe the dilemma is this. One wants to get out of this. One sees the limitation of it, the imprisonment of it. One sees it, has a feeling for it, feels the pain of it and the sorrow that has come out of it time and time again. So one wants to get rid of that, and that's just more of the same. Wanting, which comes out of ideas of getting rid of something. Or one wants enlightenment, which is also thought, which comes from what one has read and heard and remembered. One doesn't know what enlightenment is. It's an idea. So here's this person, it's you, hanging there. And there's another person, comes under the tree and says, what's the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? Let's concern ourselves for a while with this question. Bodhidharma, not all of you may know, some of you are new to this, is a more legendary than historical figure. It's never been established by historians that he really lived. But at any rate, legend has it that in the year about 500 BC, about 1,000 years after the life of the Buddha, he traveled as an old man, over 100 years old, by boat from India to China. He had been a prince of some sort, and he'd become a Buddhist monk, and he came to China at this old age, landed there someplace, and the king, or the emperor of China at the time, was a devout Buddhist. And he heard of the arrival of this Buddhist monk from India, the homeland of the Buddha, and he sent for him, wanted to talk to him. So Bodhidharma appeared for the audience, and the emperor is supposed to have said the following: I've built lots of Buddhist monasteries. I've translated many of the Buddha's sutras, scriptures, sayings, and I've supported and encouraged large orders of monks and nuns. What merit have I gained? And Bodhidharma replied, none whatsoever. Must have given the emperor quite a jolt. This was his first question, so legend has it. Doing all these things, but at the same time wanting to gain merit. So then the emperor came back and he said, tell me, what is the first principle of the holy teaching? What is the first principle of the holy teaching? In other words, give me the essence of the holy teaching. And Bodhidharma replied, vast emptiness and nothing holy. Who knows, maybe if the emperor had asked differently, Bodhidharma may have replied, vast emptiness and everything holy. Holy always meaning whole, not cut up into splinters. By the discriminating intellect. Then the emperor came back and said, who are you before me? Another version says, aren't you a holy man? And Bodhidharma replied, I don't know. And he left the palace and went far away. Up north or south, whatever the direction may have been, to sit in a cave for many years. We'll come back to Bodhidharma maybe in another koan sometime. Let me just quote one more saying, very famous saying in Zen that is attributed to Bodhidharma. And that says, referring to what Zen is, a transmission outside the scriptures. Outside the scriptures. One person yesterday asked me at length about our dropping the chants, and whether this isn't part and parcel of a 2,000-year-old Zen tradition. It may or may not be, but the chants are sutras, scriptures that are being chanted. So here it is, a transmission outside the scriptures, no reliance on words and letters, directly pointing to mind, attaining Buddhahood by seeing into one's nature, by seeing directly into one's nature. So much today for Bodhidharma. So it became quite a traditional question. It's supposedly I've been told, a characteristic of Chinese, not to be so blunt and direct in their expressions, but to cultivate indirection in one's questions and answers. So here this question, what's the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? What's the essence of this Zen? Which is supposed to be outside of scripture's direct pointing. Vast emptiness, nothing wholly. A matter of life and death. Seeing into one's nature directly. What is this all about? I want to know. I want to do it myself. This is what this person up there in the tree is being asked. Two serious people in dialogue. I want to do this thing. I want to know this thing. I want to grab it, as one person said. But that's still this old conditioned me that wants to grab. Hold on, possess. Make it one's own. The very idea of the me still in operation. Is there anything you can do without that? Without the me in operation? You don't know. You really don't know. Is there such a thing as not doing and just not knowing? Which is a state of intense energy. Who is the expression of that? But some of you are questioning without a word. Mu and who is not a word anyways, in any conventional sense. You're faced with a dilemma which involves life and death, or as one thinks, life or death. In truth, they're the same. There cannot be life without death, without dying to all these ideas of oneself. What one is and what one wants to be. Thinks one ought to be, or ought to have, or whatever. So this tremendous dilemma weighs upon one. What to do? And something needs to be done, obviously, or else one continues in the same rut as one has continued since time immemorial, because one is all humankind. And what's going on in the world is oneself. One's whole past has brought it about, and here it is. What is one to do? And there's someone in real need wanting help. Pleading for help, for instruction, for understanding. That's you too. You're both the man or the woman hanging and the man or the woman asking. And whatever answer you produce comes from this tree of knowledge, this tree of memory and conditioning. When the emperor asked Bodhidharma, "Who are you sitting here in front of me?" Bodhidharma said, "I don't know." This questioning into the darkness, into this abyss of not knowing. Is it possible for this to happen without any motive? Without one eye out on a result? Just questioning, not knowing, come what may. Hell or high water. Death. Dying to all one's fantasies. All one's beliefs and superstitions. The whole thing. Just plunging into this not knowing. Really not knowing the outcome. That is not a matter of gain, and can it also not be a matter of loss? None of that. Just questioning who or moo, or sitting not knowing. You know, we may, if we have a tremendous problem, we may think it over and over and over and over. And nothing happens. The problem is still there. So can the mind become quiet in not knowing the answer? And that quietness being one of utmost intensity and energy. Immovability. As we said this morning, moving and yet not moving. Just what is it? Mumon's commentary on this case. Even though your eloquence flows like a river, it is all to no avail. It's usually not the problem with people that we've encountered. It may have been a greater problem at the time of this koan, where often Buddhism meant studying and expounding the sutras, commentaries on them, writing commentaries on them, which incidentally the emperor himself is supposed to have done, lectured vastly on these sutras, and according to one thing I've read, that he practically considered himself holy on account of his occupation of lecturing on the sutras. Even if you can expound the great Tripitaka, it is also of no use. You must understand it. You must see what is meant. And then, well, if you can really answer it, you will revive the dead and kill the living. So many people report that so much of themselves is dead. Two people since the beginning of the session have reported that some of these remarks being made of allowing an emotion like anger or violence or jealousy to come up and to see it was something that had never been done all life. One was totally dead, which means repressing this stuff, not allowing it into consciousness, but at a tremendous sacrifice of putting a facade in its place, as is so often demanded by parents and teachers. Smile when Johnny comes in a bad mood. Smile, because the parent feels uncomfortable in the presence of this moody child. And if the child is sensitive and very much cares about the mother smiling back, it will learn to smile on top of grief or anger or sorrow. So it's of utmost importance in this work, and don't be influenced by people saying all you're doing here is psychology. You need to see this stuff to come alive. Not to come alive because it needs to be seen. It's part of you. It's part of a human being. If you repress it, it comes out the back door distorted and perverted. So can one put aside the images and see what's really there if it comes up? Put aside that image of the good girl and the good boy, which also holds us in a straitjacket. So we can only see, quote, bad things in other people, because in that we then get to be very expert. Projecting onto others what we can't see in ourselves. Not that it is not also present in others, but we see it in an exaggerated way and we fight it there. Whereas if we see it here, we don't need to fight it there. We can shake hands over it. There's then a basis of understanding and working this thing out in some measure of freedom. Freedom from repression. So don't call it ugly, don't call it bad, don't call it evil, don't call it anything, but see and look what's there, what comes up. Allow it to unfold. And if there's this attention, this loving attention, but you may say, I cannot love. All right, then just attention, bare attention. You will find it may ebb away and not leave a trace. This anger or jealousy or whatever it is, or fear. You will revive the dead and kill the living. The living which at this point is half dead anyways. Tunnel vision, not looking left or right, just the goal or something. If, however, you are unable to answer, wait for Maitreya to come and ask him. This saying, if you can't answer, you'll have to wait forever. I would say, don't wait for Maitreya. don't postpone it. For God's sake. You don't have to. You think you can because you create time in your mind. And Maitreya, that future Buddha, will take care of me then. By that time we'll have blown this earth to bits, probably. Mumon's poem, Kyogen is just gibbering. How vicious his poison is. This poison of seemingly paralyzing each move. Each move of this self. Stopping up the monks' mouths, he makes their devil's eyes glare. This is the Mumon's special style. Another version, it says, looking at them with his devil's eyes, with the eyes of a devil, referring to Kyogen himself. Don't try to figure it out. It is relatively unimportant. At this time, how should he answer? How should she answer? We will stop here for today.